The prince often felt trapped in the golden walls of his palace. Every day was the same: meetings, lessons, and endless appearances that never made him feel truly alive. People admired him, called him kind and wise, yet none of them knew the emptiness he felt inside. He had everything anyone could dream of: wealth, power, comfort, but he wanted something different, something real, something that touched the heart. One morning, feeling restless, he decided to leave the palace quietly. He wanted to see the city not as a prince, but as a man. The streets were noisy, filled with merchants calling out, children running and laughing, and the smell of fresh bread and spices mixing in the air. He wore a simple cloak over his royal clothes, trying not to draw attention. But even so, people noticed him. Not because he looked like a prince, but because he walked with a quiet confidence that made people stare. He didn't care. Today he wanted to experience life as it truly was, as he wandered through the busy streets. He noticed a small crowd gathered near a corner. Curious, he walked closer. There, sitting on a wooden crate, was a young woman with a basket of flowers in front of her. Her eyes were closed, and she moved her hands gently over the flowers, arranging them with care. Something about her caught him immediately. She had a calmness, a serenity that seemed to stop time around her. Despite the chaos of the city, she seemed untouched, as if she lived in her own world. The prince stepped closer, drawn to her presence. He realized then that she was blind. Her eyes, though closed, seemed to hold a depth that made him pause. He could not explain why, but he felt a strange connection, something that pulled him toward her. He stepped forward and bought a small bouquet of flowers. When he handed her the coins, she smiled, and her voice was soft but strong. "Thank you," she said. "I hope these flowers bring joy to someone today." Her words struck him. There was no pretense, no false politeness, just honesty and warmth. He smiled, feeling something he had never felt before. "I think they will," he replied. "But I think they bring joy to you as well. They make you happy, don't they?" She laughed softly, a sound like a gentle breeze. "Yes, they do. Life is made of small joys, little moments we can hold on to. Even when we cannot see the world, we can feel it. We can know its beauty." The prince was silent for a moment, thinking about her words. No one had ever spoken to him like this. People always treated him with respect because of his title, but no one had ever shared their soul with him. This woman, with her simple words, had already reached something deep inside him. He found himself returning to her day after day. Sometimes he would sit and listen to her speak about her life, her family, her dreams, and her struggles. Other times she would tell him stories she had heard, tales of the city, of travelers, of the seasons changing. He loved the way she described everything. Her words painted pictures more vivid than anything he had seen in the palace. She taught him to notice the small things, the sound of a bird in the morning, the way the wind moved through the trees, the laughter of children echoing in the streets. She made him feel alive in ways he could not describe. He never revealed his identity at first. He wanted her to know him, not the prince, but the man. And she, in turn, treated him as a friend, never questioning who he was. She trusted him, and in that trust, he found a freedom he had never known. As the sun began to dip behind the buildings, casting long shadows across the streets, he sat beside her as she arranged her flowers. He watched her hands move gently over the petals. "You have a gift," he said quietly. "You make life beautiful, even for yourself." She smiled, tilting her head toward him. "We all have gifts in one way or another. Mine is simple. I can feel life in ways others do not notice. I cannot see, but I can know the world through touch, through smell, through sound. That is enough for me." Her words stayed with him long after he left. That night, in the palace, he could not sleep. He thought about her constantly, her voice, her laughter, her way of seeing the world. He realized he had never felt this way about anyone before. It was not the beauty of her face or the softness of her hands, but something deeper, something that touched his heart and soul. He knew he was falling in love with her, and the thought scared him. Days turned into weeks, and his visits became the highlight of his life. He would spend hours talking with her, learning about the world from her perspective. She, too, began to look forward to his visits. There was a comfort in his presence, a kindness that made her feel safe. Though she could not see him, she felt his attention, his care, and his patience. It was different from the people she knew in the city. They came and went, but he stayed, and she sensed his sincerity. One day, a sudden rainstorm began. The streets filled with puddles, and people ran to find shelter. The prince and the woman were caught in it. He quickly took off his cloak and covered her, shielding her from the rain. She laughed, feeling the drops on her face, but safe under his protection. "You are very kind," she said, her voice full of warmth. "Most people would have left me to the rain." "I cannot leave you," he said simply. "Not now. Not ever." Her heart beat faster at his words, though she did not understand why. There was a truth in them, a feeling that something important was beginning. And for the first time, the prince felt that he could be himself completely, without pretense, without fear of judgment. With her, he could be just a man, not a prince. As the storm passed and the streets began to clear, he walked her to her small home on the edge of the city. She lived in a modest place, filled with flowers and simple furniture. It smelled of herbs and the earth, warm and comforting. He realized that this simple life, though far from the luxury of the palace, was full of beauty and honesty. It was a world he had never known, and he wanted to be part of it before leaving. He bought more flowers from her, insisting she keep some for herself. "For you," he said, "because you deserve beauty every day." She took them, feeling the softness of the petals and the weight of his sincerity. "Thank you," she said. "Not many people think of others like this." That night, the prince could not stop thinking about her. He realized that meeting her had changed something inside him. She had shown him a way of seeing the world that was honest, simple, and beautiful. She had shown him life without walls, without titles, without the chains of expectation. And most of all, she had shown him love in its purest form, connection not based on appearances or wealth, but on understanding, care, and the human heart. The days that followed were filled with quiet joy. He would visit her at different times, sometimes bringing a small gift, sometimes just sitting and talking. They shared stories, laughter, and even silent moments where the world around them seemed to disappear. Their bond grew stronger with each encounter, connection deeper than either of them had ever known. The prince knew that their relationship was fragile. He knew that the palace, the court, and the expectations of royalty could never approve. Yet he could not stop himself from caring for her. She was no longer just a flower seller on the street. She had become the center of his world, the reason he woke up with hope in his heart. He understood for the first time that love was not about power or privilege, but about being present, being honest, and giving oneself fully. And so, their lives intertwined quietly and beautifully, as the prince discovered a world beyond the palace, and the blind woman discovered the depth of a love she never expected. Each day, their bond grew stronger, a testament to the power of human connection, trust, and the simple magic of being truly seen by another soul. Days turned into weeks, and the prince's secret visits became the most cherished moments of his life. He began to notice that each encounter with the blind woman brought new lessons. She had a way of understanding the world that no one else in the palace had ever shown him. While others focused on appearances, politics, or wealth, she spoke of feeling, trust, and small joys. She reminded him that life's true value was found in human connection, not in titles or possessions. One afternoon, the prince arrived at her small flower stall to find her arranging tiny bouquets with delicate care. The scent of fresh flowers filled the air, mixed with the sounds of children playing nearby and the distant clanging of the market. He watched her work quietly as if she existed in her own world, yet somehow sensed him without needing to see. He realized that her presence had become a comfort, almost like home. "Good morning," he said softly, not wanting to startle her. She turned her head slightly, feeling his presence. "I wondered if you would come today," she replied, her voice light with warmth. "I have a feeling when you are near, even if I do not see you," he smiled, feeling a joy he had not experienced in a long time. He could not remember the last time someone looked at him without titles or expectations, just as a person. "I could not miss this day," he said. Your stories make the city seem brighter, more alive." They spent the morning together, talking about everything and nothing at all. She spoke about the changing seasons, how the scent of rain could make one feel calm, how the wind could carry secrets if one only listened. He listened intently, feeling the world through her words, imagining the beauty she described. It was a new kind of seeing, a kind he had never known before, and it touched something deep within him. As days passed, their conversations grew longer and more personal. He began to share small pieces of his life, careful not to reveal his royal identity. He spoke of his love for reading, his dreams of travel, and his longing for freedom. She listened patiently, never interrupting, always offering understanding and insight. One day, while he was helping her arrange flowers, she spoke softly. "Do you ever feel trapped?" she asked, her fingers brushing against a delicate bloom. He paused, startled by her question. Few people had ever asked him that. "Yes," he admitted quietly. "I have everything, but sometimes it feels like a golden cage. Everything is decided for me. I have no freedom to make my own choices." She nodded, her face calm. "I understand," she said. "People think I am weak because I cannot see, but my world is limited in ways that teach patience. I face obstacles every day, yet I feel alive because I make the most of what I can sense. Freedom is not always about choice. Sometimes it is about how fully we experience life." Her words stayed with him long after he left. He realized that, though their lives were so different, they shared the same desire, to experience life freely and truly without being bound by expectations. That night, as he lay in his grand palace bed, he thought about her constantly. He could not escape the feeling that his heart was tied to her in a way he had never felt before. Weeks turned into months. The prince's visits became more frequent, each one more intimate than the last. They shared simple meals together, laughed at small jokes, and sometimes just sat in silence, listening to the city's heartbeat. She taught him to notice subtle things, the way a bird sang a song in the morning, the gentle rustle of leaves, the laughter of a child passing by. Each detail became a treasure because he experienced it through her perspective. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky in shades of orange and pink, they sat by a small fountain near her home. The water splashed gently, creating tiny rainbows in the sunlight. The prince watched her face, imagining how the light might touch her skin, and felt a surge of emotion. He realized that he loved her deeply, not for her looks, her charm, or her charm, but for the strength, wisdom, and kindness she carried in her heart. He wanted to tell her, but fear held him back. He was afraid that revealing his feelings would complicate everything, that the world outside their small moments would interfere. He stayed silent, though his heart ached to speak. Meanwhile, she sensed the change in him, sensing that his emotions ran deeper than words could express. She, too, began to feel a bond growing stronger, connection that went beyond friendship or simple affection. One afternoon, sudden disturbance in the market made them move closer together. A group of merchants argued loudly and people pushed and jostled in the narrow street. The prince instinctively placed a hand over her shoulders to guide her safely. She leaned slightly into him, feeling the security in his touch. "You always protect me," she said softly, "even when I do not ask." He smiled, feeling warmth spread through his chest. "I cannot help it," he replied. "Being near you makes me care in ways I cannot explain." For the first time, he felt that he might be ready to share more of himself, to reveal parts of his life that were hidden. But he knew the consequences of revealing his true identity could be dangerous. The court would never allow their relationship, and the expectations of royalty weighed heavily on him. Still, he could not ignore the bond growing between them. The undeniable pull of love that was slowly but surely taking root. The blind woman, unaware of the full depth of his struggle, continued to share her world with him. She spoke of her childhood, the lessons her parents had taught her, and the small dreams she carried in her heart. She shared stories of people she met, of kindness she witnessed, and moments of joy that others might overlook. Each story taught the prince something new, something he could not learn in the palace or from advisors. She showed him that true wisdom often came from simplicity and sincerity, not from power or education alone. One quiet evening, he walked her home after a long day at the market. The streets were empty, the air cool and calm. They walked slowly, their hands occasionally brushing together. When they reached her door, she paused. "I wish I could see the world as you do," she said softly. He stopped and took her hand gently. "Perhaps one day you will see more than you imagine. But even now, you see life in a way that many never will. You notice what matters most." She smiled, feeling the truth in his words. There was comfort in knowing that he valued her perspective, that he saw her not as someone in need of pity, but as a person with strength, insight, and beauty that went beyond appearances. As the days continued, the prince's heart became increasingly conflicted. He wanted to spend every moment with her, yet he knew that his royal duties and the expectations of the palace loomed like shadows over their time together. He began to realize that love alone might not be enough to bridge the gap between their worlds. Still, he could not imagine his life without her. She had opened his eyes to feelings and experiences he had never known, and he was willing to face any challenge to keep their bond alive. Through it all, their love grew quietly but steadily. They shared laughter, small adventures in the city, and long conversations that lasted into the night. Each encounter strengthened the trust and affection between them. They had no need for grand gestures or declarations. Their connection was built on presence, understanding, and shared moments that touched the soul. The prince began to understand that this love was different from anything he had known. It was not about power, wealth, or status. It was about honesty, care, and the willingness to share one's heart fully. And for the first time in his life, he felt that he could truly be himself, without masks or expectations, with someone who saw him for who he really was. As the months passed, the bond between them became undeniable. Friends and strangers might never understand it, and the palace might never approve, but they no longer cared about the world outside their shared moments. They had found something rare and precious, a love rooted in trust, respect, and the simple beauty of human connection. And though challenges awaited them, neither could imagine life without the other, for they had discovered the kind of love that transforms hearts and changes lives forever. The prince knew the days of innocence, and quiet moments with the blind woman could not last forever. Each visit became tinged with anxiety, the weight of the palace and expectations pressing on his mind. He had fallen in love with her completely. The thought of losing her, or being forced to hide their bond, filled him with dread. One morning, he arrived at her small flower stall to find her humming softly, arranging the blooms with the same care he had come to admire. The city was alive with sounds of merchants and passers-by, yet to him nothing mattered except her presence. He stepped closer, careful not to make her startled. "Good morning," he said gently. She turned her face toward him, smiling, sensing him as always. "I wondered if you would come today. You have been quiet the last few days." He hesitated. How could he tell her what was on his mind? How could he explain that his world and hers were colliding in ways neither of them could control? He chose the safest truth. "I have been thinking," he said. "Thinking about us and the world outside these streets." She tilted her head, sensing his tension. "You worry," she said, "about what people will think." "About the world?" Nodded. "Yes, I love being with you, but my life is complicated. There are expectations, rules, and responsibilities I cannot ignore. I fear they may come between us, even if I do everything I can to protect what we have." She reached out and gently touched his hand. "Then we will face them together, as much as we can." Love is not about avoiding challenges. It is about holding on, even when life is difficult. Her words gave him strength. He realized that hiding his feelings any longer was impossible. He wanted to tell her the truth about who he was, even if it risked everything. That evening, under the shade of an old tree in a quiet garden, he took a deep breath and spoke. "I must tell you something," he said, his voice steady but trembling. "I am not just a man walking in the streets. I am a prince. My life, my responsibilities, and the people around me all see me as someone I am not inside. But I wanted you to know the truth. I am who I am because I want to be with you, not because of my title or power. She paused, feeling the weight of his words. Silence hung between them for a moment before she spoke softly. I sensed there was more to you, she said. It does not change what I feel. I care for you, not for your title, but for who you are. That is enough. Relief washed over him. He had feared rejection, feared that his status would make her see him differently. But her acceptance made him feel lighter than he had in years. They sat together in silence, listening to the wind rustle through the leaves. Feeling a bond that had grown stronger through honesty and trust. Days passed, and their love grew deeper, yet the reality of the outside world began to intrude. The palace had begun preparations for the prince's arranged engagement to a noblewoman from a powerful family. Advisors whispered in corridors, and the court expected him to follow tradition. Each thought of the engagement brought a knot to his stomach. How could he reconcile love for a woman outside his world with the duties he had been born into? He considered speaking to the queen, but he feared the consequences. His love was genuine, yet the traditions of royalty were rigid. The palace would never understand, and his actions could endanger not only himself, but also the woman he loved. He felt trapped between two worlds, each demanding loyalty, each pulling him in opposite directions. One evening, as he walked through the garden after a long day of thinking, he realized he could no longer hide his struggle. He needed to act, to make a choice. The blind woman, sensing his turmoil during their evening meeting, asked gently, "Something troubles you. I can feel it. Please, tell me." He took a deep breath, searching for the right words. "I love you," he said simply. "I have loved you from the moment I met you, and I want to spend my life with you. But my life, my responsibilities, may stand in the way. I must find a way to protect both you and the people who depend on me." Her hand found his, squeezing gently. "I do not care about your status," she said. "I care about the man I know, the one who listens, who cares, who is kind. That is who I love." The sincerity in her voice struck him deeply. He realized that their love could survive the obstacles, but the path would not be simple. He began to make plans, quietly thinking about ways to be with her, without endangering her or the kingdom. He considered leaving the palace, running away with her, or finding a way to step away from royal expectations. But each option carried risks. Each sacrifice weighed heavily on him. Meanwhile, the woman remained unaware of the full complexity of his world. She continued to share her life, her thoughts, and her joys, trusting him completely. Her faith in their bond gave him hope and courage. He knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, he could not abandon her. She had become the center of his world, and he was willing to face any consequence to be with her. As the weeks went on, the palace began to sense his divided attention. Courtiers noticed his distracted manner, advisors whispered warnings, and the noblewoman chosen for the engagement grew impatient. Pressure mounted from all sides, yet the prince remained steadfast in his resolve to protect the woman he loved. He could not allow politics or expectations to destroy the connection that had brought him true happiness. One quiet night, he sat alone in the garden, reflecting on the path ahead. He knew a decision must be made, one that would change the course of both their lives. He wanted to marry her, to bring her into his world, but he also knew the dangers that could follow. His heart ached at the thought of losing her. Yet he understood that love sometimes demanded sacrifice, courage, and wisdom beyond the heart alone. He returned to her the next day. Walking through the familiar streets with determination, he found her arranging flowers under the morning sun, the scent of blooms filling the air. She looked up, sensing him, and smiled. "You seem resolved," she said. "Whatever you decide, I trust you." He took her hands in his, feeling the warmth of her touch. "I will find a way," he said. "A way for us to be together, without danger, without harm. I cannot promise it will be easy, but I can promise that I will not let go of what we have." She nodded, her trust unwavering. "I believe in you," she said simply. Love is worth fighting for. That day marked a turning point. The prince realized that love required action, not just feelings. He could no longer wait, could no longer hide. Plans had to be made, risks assessed, and sacrifices considered. But he was determined. For the first time, he saw the future not as dictated by duty or expectation, but as something he could shape with the woman he loved. As the sun set, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, they walked together through the quiet streets. Their hands brushed, their hearts connected, and in that moment, the world outside ceased to exist. They had discovered something rare: a love, not constrained by wealth, power, or sight, but by trust, understanding, and the courage to face the unknown together. And so, the stage was set for the next chapter of their lives. The prince knew that choices would have to be made, that sacrifices might be required, and that the world could test their bond in ways they could not yet imagine. But for now, in the quiet embrace of shared presence, they held on to each other, ready to face whatever fate might bring, together. The days grew heavier for the prince as the pressures from the palace increased. Advisors whispered constantly, reminding him of the duties he could not ignore. The noble woman chosen for his engagement awaited him with patience that masked expectation. The royal family grew anxious, sensing that their carefully laid plans were slipping. Yet, his heart remained with the blind woman, whose presence had become the center of his life. He knew he could not abandon her. But he also could not ignore the consequences of defying his role. One morning, he visited her in the market, arriving early while the city was still waking. She greeted him with a soft smile, unaware of the storm gathering around their lives. They sat together among the flowers, the scent of roses and jasmine filling the air, creating a small bubble of peace amidst the chaos of the streets. "I feel the weight of the world pressing down," he confessed quietly. "I cannot see a way for us to be together without causing harm to others or to you. I love you more than anything, but the world may not allow it." She placed her hand gently on his, sensing the depth of his struggle. "Then we must face it, together. Love is never without challenges. It is not weakness to step back and think. It is strength to consider what is right for both of us." Her words resonated with him, yet the decision he faced was unbearable. He loved her fully, but he could not risk her safety or happiness. If the palace discovered their relationship, she could be caught in its web of politics and expectations. He knew he had to act, and the choice he made would define the rest of their lives. That evening, after their meeting, he retreated to the palace gardens to think. The stars shone faintly above, and the cool night breeze whispered through the leaves. He realized that the only way to protect her hand, to honor the love between them, was to remove himself from the palace entirely, to leave his title, his wealth, and the life he had known behind. It was a decision that tore at his heart, but he understood it was the only way to ensure her safety. The next day, he met her at their usual spot. She noticed something different in his demeanor, a solemnity that made her heart tighten. "You are quiet today," she said softly. "What troubles you?" He took a deep breath, knowing that the words he was about to speak would change everything. "I have made a decision," he said. "I cannot marry you as a prince. The palace, the expectations, the dangers, they are too great. But I cannot abandon you either. To keep you safe, I must leave my title behind, disappear from the life I have known, and live simply. It is the only way to protect you and the people I care for." "Hey." She was silent, trying to grasp the weight of his words. "Leave, you mean? Leave everything?" she asked, her voice trembling. He nodded. "Yes. I will give up my crown, my wealth, my home. I will become a man among men, no longer a prince. I cannot promise a life of comfort, but I can promise that I will return to you when it is safe, that I will love you always." Tears filled her eyes, not from anger or despair, but from the depth of his sacrifice. She reached for his hand, holding it tightly. "You do this for me?" she whispered. "Yes," he replied, his voice filled with pain and love. "Because I cannot bear to see you hurt or entangled in the dangers of my world. My love for you is stronger than any title or crown. I will face whatever comes, and I will do it for us." She stood in silence, feeling the magnitude of his choice. A mix of sadness and admiration filled her heart. "You are brave," she said finally. "I do not want you to suffer, yet I cannot stop loving you. The prince embraced her gently, savoring the warmth and trust of her presence. They stood together, knowing that life would soon pull them apart, yet finding comfort in the bond they shared. The decision weighed heavily on both of them, but it was made out of love, not fear. In the following days, he prepared quietly. He relinquished his royal duties, passed his responsibilities to trusted advisors, and made arrangements to disappear from the palace without drawing attention. Each step was painful, as he said silent goodbyes to the life he had known, yet his resolve never wavered. He would endure the hardships of a humble life if it meant her safety and their love remained intact. On the night of his departure, he visited her one last time before leaving the city. She waited for him, unaware of the exact nature of his plan. He handed her a small letter, simple and unadorned, with trembling hands. "Read this when you are alone," he said softly. "It will explain everything." She took the letter, sensing the gravity in his voice. "Will you come back?" she asked. He smiled faintly, fighting back emotion. "I will always love you. One day, when the time is right, we will be together again." He left before dawn, disappearing into the quiet streets. The palace remained unchanged, yet he was no longer a part of it. He had given up everything: title, wealth, comfort, for a love that transcended all of it. His sacrifice was complete, and he embraced a new life with humility, courage, and the hope that one day he would reunite with the woman who had captured his heart, the blind woman. Holding the letter close, felt the absence of his presence immediately. She could not see him, could not know the path he had taken. But she felt his love in the weight of the words he had left behind. She read and reread the letter, understanding the magnitude of his sacrifice, and her heart ached. Yet within that ache was also hope. A hope that love could survive distance, sacrifice, time. Days turned into weeks, and the city continued its rhythm. She returned to her flowers, tending to each bloom with care, yet a part of her remained tied to him, waiting, believing. The prince, in his humble life away from the palace, endured challenges and hardships he had never known. He learned to live simply, to work for sustenance, and to navigate the world without privilege. Yet through every trial, his heart remained steadfast, anchored by the love he had sacrificed everything for. Even in separation, their bond endured. Each thought, each memory, each heartbeat carried the weight of the love they had nurtured together. Their connection was unbroken, strengthened by sacrifice, patience, and the unwavering belief that love, when true, could overcome all obstacles. And so, the prince's life changed forever. He had given up a crown for love, choosing humanity over privilege, the heart over duty. His sacrifice was silent, his actions hidden from the world, yet in that quiet, he had made a choice that would shape both their destinies. He lived in hope, dreaming of the day when he could return to the woman who had changed his life, and when the world might allow them to finally be together without fear, without danger, and without compromise. In this act, the story reached its turning point. The prince had proven that love sometimes demands the ultimate sacrifice, that courage and selflessness could shape destinies, and that true love is not measured by comfort or convenience, but by the willingness to endure hardship for the one you cherish. The world could take everything from him, but it could not take the love that lived in his heart, nor the hope that one day their lives would reunite in joy and peace. Years passed, and the city continued its rhythm, full of life and change. Yet the blind woman never forgot the man who had walked into her life and left an indelible mark. She continued tending her flowers, each bloom a small reminder of the love that had shaped her heart. Despite his absence, she felt him in every gentle breeze, in the soft rustling of leaves, and in the quiet moments when the world seemed still. The letter he had left her remained carefully kept, a treasure she read over and over, drawing strength from the words and the love behind them. Meanwhile, the prince lived a life far removed from the palace he had once known. He worked with his hands, learned to live with simplicity, and faced the trials of everyday life with humility and courage. Each hardship reminded him of the sacrifice he had made, yet he never regretted it. His love for the blind woman guided him, sustaining him through difficult days and lonely nights. Though he no longer wore a crown, he carried the richness of a heart that had learned the meaning of true love, even in his humble existence. Never stopped thinking of her. He wondered how she spent her days, what flowers she arranged, and whether she felt the same longing he did. Memories of their shared moments, her laughter, the softness of her hand, the sound of her voice kept him moving forward. He dreamed of a day when they could be together again, free from the restrictions of his past life and the expectations of the world. One crisp morning, as the blind woman arranged roses in her shop, a stranger appeared at the door. She felt his presence before she heard his voice, sensing a familiarity that tugged at her heart. "Hello," the man said softly, and she felt a shiver of recognition. "I hope I am not intruding." Her heart leaped. Something in his tone, the warmth of his presence, felt impossibly familiar. She reached out her hand instinctively, and when it met his, she gasped softly. "It is you," she whispered, her voice trembling. I thought I would never see you again." He smiled, a mixture of relief and emotion in his eyes. "I have returned," he said. "I left my life behind to protect you, but I never stopped loving you. I have come back, and I hope we can finally be together." Tears filled her eyes, and she laughed softly, a sound filled with joy and disbelief. "You came back," she said. "After all this time, you came back." "Yes," he replied. "I endured years of hardship, but every day, every moment, I carried you in my heart. And now, I am here, ready to share my life with you, without fear, without titles, without compromise." They embraced, holding each other tightly, savoring the long-awaited reunion. The years apart had tested their love, yet it had not diminished. It had only strengthened it. Each sacrifice, each moment of waiting, had prepared them for this instant, for the life they could now begin together. The blind woman felt his heart beat against hers. Feeling the depth of his love in a way that went beyond sight or words, she realized that true love is not measured by comfort, wealth, or status, but by endurance, sacrifice, and the unwavering presence of the heart. She had waited, she had trusted, and now the reward was the man who had given everything for her safety and happiness. Together, they rebuilt their lives, creating a world of simplicity and joy. The prince, free from the expectations of royalty, found contentment in ordinary work, in laughter, and in shared moments with her. She, too, embraced life fully, tending to her flowers, sharing her wisdom, and discovering the beauty of living beside someone who cherished her completely. Their love became a quiet legend among those who knew them, a story of sacrifice, patience, and enduring devotion. People spoke of the prince who had left his crown for love, and the woman who had trusted and waited, and together they inspired others to believe that true love could overcome the greatest obstacles. Years passed gently, and the city witnessed their simple happiness. They walked together in the same streets where they first met, their hands intertwined, sharing stories and laughter, each day a new adventure. The prince no longer carried the burden of expectation. The woman no longer faced solitude. They had built a life rooted in understanding, compassion, and mutual respect. On quiet evenings, they would sit among the flowers she had tended for so long, listening to the wind and the soft sounds of the city. He would sometimes read to her, and she would describe the colors he could not see, turning each description into a shared vision of beauty. Their world was not one of grandeur, but of love fully realized, where every moment held meaning and every day was cherished. The prince's sacrifice, once a source of pain, had become a testament to the strength of their bond. They had learned that love requires courage, patience, and selflessness. Their hearts, tested by time and trial, had emerged resilient, filled with a depth of understanding few ever experience in the end. They discovered that true happiness comes not from wealth or power, but from the presence of someone who knows you, trusts you, and walks beside you through life's challenges. The prince and the blind woman, bound by a love that had endured separation and sacrifice, lived their days in quiet joy, proving that the heart's devotion can overcome all obstacles in that love. when pure and true, is a force stronger than any worldly expectation. And so, the story of the prince and the blind woman reached its conclusion not in grand palaces or royal titles, but in a life built together with patience, trust, and unwavering love. Their journey had been difficult, filled with trials and sacrifices. Yet it led them to a happiness that was profound, simple, and enduring. They had faced the world, faced fate, and faced the hardships of life, only to find that love, when nurtured and protected, could create a world of its own, a world where they could finally be free, together forever. Years had passed since the prince and the blind woman reunited, and their life together had grown into a steady rhythm of simplicity, love, and small joys. Each morning, the city came alive with its familiar sounds, the calls of merchants, the laughter of children, the soft footsteps of people walking to work, but within the small world they had created, there was peace. The prince no longer wore a crown or held power over others, yet he found more fulfillment in the humble life he had chosen than he ever had in the grandeur of the palace. The blind woman continued her work with flowers, her hands dancing over the petals with the same care and devotion as before, but now her heart was full in ways it had never been. Their home, though modest, had become a sanctuary. It was filled with the scent of fresh blooms, the warmth of a small fire, and the soft laughter they shared every evening. They learned to rely on each other not just for love but for companionship and guidance. Every day brought new lessons in patience, understanding, and the quiet power of shared life. The prince had become skilled in many tasks that once seemed foreign to him. He cooked meals, tended the garden, and repaired small things around the house. Each task was done not out of obligation, but out of the joy of living a life together and contributing to the world they had built. One morning, the prince woke before dawn, feeling a sense of purpose and excitement he had not felt in years. He quietly moved through the house, careful not to wake the woman as he prepared a small breakfast. The smell of freshly baked bread and simmering tea filled the air. When she awoke and entered the kitchen, she paused, sensing the unusual attention he had given to the meal. "You did all this?" she asked softly, her fingers brushing against the edge of the table. He smiled, his eyes warm. "Yes, I thought we could start the day with something special. Life is made of moments like this." Sat together, sharing the simple meal, their conversation light and filled with laughter. Though the years had passed, their love had not faded. It had deepened. The prince realized that happiness was not found in grand gestures, titles, or wealth, but in the quiet, everyday moments where two people could care for each other fully and honestly. Later that day, they decided to walk through the city together. Though she could not see, the blind woman had learned to navigate the streets with confidence, sensing changes in the ground beneath her feet, recognizing the flow of people, and listening to the subtle sounds that marked familiar places. He walked beside her, guiding her gently when needed, but mostly walking as equals, sharing in the rhythm of the city. As they moved through the crowded streets, they noticed the small joys around them. Children played in the corners, street performers sang and played instruments, and merchants sold fresh bread, spices, and colorful fabrics. The prince felt a profound appreciation for the life they had chosen, free from expectations and bound only by love and mutual respect. He realized that the palace, with its grandeur and rules, had never offered him the freedom he now felt. That afternoon, they visited the marketplace where they had first met. The Saitor, rather, the memory of the place brought a wave of nostalgia. Though she could not see, the blind woman recognized the scents, the sounds, and the familiar voices of merchants who had been there for years. They stopped at a small flower stall. She ran her hands over the blooms with delight. "Do you remember when we first met here?" she asked, her voice filled with warmth. "I do," he replied, smiling at the memory. "It feels like a lifetime ago, yet also like yesterday. That moment changed everything." She nodded, her fingers brushing a delicate rose. "Yes, you showed me the world could be more than what I sensed in my little corner. You taught me that life could be beautiful in ways I had not imagined." He squeezed her hand gently. "And you taught me to see beyond appearances. You showed me the world's true beauty lies in love, in kindness, and in the courage to face life together." As they walked back home, the city slowly quieted, the sun dipping low in the sky. Their conversation drifted to dreams and plans for the future. They spoke of traveling, of visiting distant places, and experiencing new cultures. Though they lived simply, their minds and hearts remained open to the wonders of the world. Had discovered that love could be a compass, guiding them through challenges, adventures, and the passage of time. That evening, they sat by the fireplace, reflecting on their journey. The prince shared stories of the life he had left behind, tales of the palace, and memories of moments when he had struggled with his duties and the expectations placed upon him. The blind woman listened intently, her voice offering comfort, her understanding providing a sense of peace he had never known. They spoke of the sacrifices made, of the choices that had defined their lives, and of the love that had endured despite all obstacles. As night fell, the city outside quieted, and the house became a haven of warmth and serenity. They sat together in silence, feeling the presence of each other, understanding that their love had been tested and had emerged stronger than ever. The prince realized that true fulfillment came not from titles or wealth, but from the ability to share life with someone who understood and cherished every part of his heart in the days that followed. They continued their simple routines, yet each day felt rich with meaning. The prince helped tend the garden, learning the rhythms of planting and nurturing. The blind woman shared her knowledge of flowers, teaching him to notice their scents, textures, and subtle differences. Together, they created a small world of beauty and harmony, a sanctuary from the noise and complications of life outside. One morning, a letter arrived from a distant town carried by a messenger. It was from a friend of the prince, someone from the palace who had kept track of his safety and well-being over the years. The letter expressed admiration for the prince's courage and for the life he had built, and it invited him to visit the city for a brief reunion with people who had once been part of his former life. The prince read the letter aloud to the blind woman, who listened carefully. Sensing the significance of the invitation, "Do you wish to go?" she asked, her voice calm and understanding. He thought for a moment, considering the journey. "Yes, but only for a short time," he replied. "I want to reconnect, but our life here, together, is what truly matters. I cannot leave it behind." She smiled. "Then we will go together, and we will return. Nothing will change what we have." They packed a small bag, taking only what was necessary, and set out on the journey. The road was familiar yet new, filled with the sounds, smells, and experiences that enriched their lives. Traveling together, they discovered even more about each other, the way they supported one another, how they communicated without words, and how their love made every challenge lighter. During the visit, the prince reunited with old acquaintances from the palace, and the blind woman impressed them all with her wisdom, kindness, and strength. Though they had lived apart from royal life, they were greeted with respect, not for titles, but for the character they had built and the love that had endured. The prince realized that honor and admiration could be earned through actions and integrity. It's not just inherited titles. When the visit concluded, they returned home, their bond even stronger. They had faced the outside world together, learned to navigate challenges, and returned to the life they had chosen with confidence and joy. The experience reinforced the lesson they had known all along, that love, patience, and understanding could create a life richer than any palace, any crown, or any expectation. Years continued to pass, each day a testament to the life they had built. They celebrated milestones quietly, shared stories and laughter, and faced obstacles with courage and trust. Their love had grown into a deep, enduring partnership, one that inspired those around them and proved that true happiness comes from connection, sacrifice, and unwavering devotion. In the evenings, they would sit together in the garden, surrounded by the flowers she had nurtured for decades. The prince would often take her hand, feeling the warmth and strength in her grip, and together they would watch the sun set, reflecting on a life well lived and a love that had overcome trials and distance. Their story, though simple on the surface, was profound in its depth, a reminder that the greatest riches of life are found not in power or wealth, but in the heart's capacity to love and endure. And so, the prince and the blind woman continued their journey, living each day fully, embracing the beauty of life, and cherishing the love that had endured every test. They proved that love is not measured by sight, status, or privilege, but by presence, trust, and the courage to face life together. In their quiet, joyful world, they found everything they had ever needed, and more, knowing that true happiness comes from the heart and the bond it shares with another soul.